Good afternoon. And welcome to the 17th annual blessing of the San Antonio Peacemakers. It's just really good to be in this space and to have other folks joining us virtually. We've packed this house before, so I'm guessing that it's a much bigger house beyond us that is joining us today. And I don't know about you, but that actually brings joy to my heart that there are so many more people who are watching this today. So thank you for being here. My name is Ann Helmke, and I'm part of the all-volunteer core team of the Peace Center. I also serve as the faith liaison for the city, and I'm just going to probably confuse you by those different roles I play, but it's all the same work. And as Eric said to me earlier, it's a humble honor to do the kind of work that all of us do and to be able to thank people for doing that. So I'm just going to give you kind of a really quick movement because we've got more movement coming and it's very exciting. You're all here for a historic moment today. So 1994, the seed of the Peace Center was planted at the San Antonio Gang Peace Summit when 14 truces were formed. And the largest drop in crime happened in our city in 30 years. Out of that, people came together and said, we want to do more. There's much more that needs to be done. The 501c3 happened in 95. Many things happened then and since: education, walks, pilgrimages, much growth both locally, nationally, and internationally, and the Peace Center continues to do that kind of work. In 2006 was our first blessing of the San Antonio Peacemakers. It was done and still is done in conjunction with United Nations 64 days, the season of nonviolence. Those dates start today and go for 64 days between the assassination dates of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. We also then, like 2 years after that, we just got this idea we should have peace laureates. Everybody has poet laureates, Nobel Peace laureates. Why can't cities? As far as we know, we're still the only city that has peace laureates, and so we've been doing that since 2008. And we have a long list. I probably should be giving you that list, but you can find it on the Peace Center's website, and I know that you know some of those folks. And they will remain peace laureates forever. In 2009, some theologian named Karen Armstrong from Britain presented in front of the real live TED and won. You know, it's kind of like The Voice. So everybody who's there votes on who wins, and they get $100,000 for the best idea the planet needs. And she spoke about compassion, and she won. And out of that, she took the $100,000 and collected together different faith leaders across the planet, and I think they wrote the most important document of our time. It's called the Charter for Compassion. So that happened in 2009. We read a book by her, The 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, and were convinced. I mean, we were peacemakers, still are, but we suddenly went, oh, so compassion is the path to peace. So we kind of changed and tweaked our route a bit. And in 2010, we decided to be doing grassroots work at becoming a compassionate city. And we decided to start grassroots so that it didn't make any difference who was in elected office, that if we got it down in the roots enough, it wouldn't go away. So about 7 years later, after a lot of hard work, finally in 2017, this resolution came the first day that the mayor was in office. He signed the resolution as a compassionate San Antonio. And so we've been a compassionate city at that point with about 100 other cities globally. Today it's about 450 cities globally. So we're connected to this network. And then in 2020, I don't know why it took us so long to figure it out, but we started to do business as Compassionate San Antonio, because that's the business we do, is compassion work. So that happened in 2020, and we added 2 more awards to the laureate, the Golden Rule awards, and we'll hear about that more in a little bit. I want to invite Mig forward, Mig Garcia from Alamo Colleges and Northwest Vista in particular, because this is the first part of our big news for today, besides all of our awards. The Peace Center is relocating. I hope Scott knows. Did you tell Scott? Scott's from Oblate. Scott. But we're growing bigger, and Alamo Colleges is going to be the new home of the Peace Center. And so we'll hear more about that later, but Meg will be taking that role of directing at Northwest Vista. We call it an animating director. And so you put things into action. So, you're going to see some of that transition that we're in. Today is the official announcement day. So that's kind of the quick history of the Peace Center to this moment in time, and I want to invite Karen and Jackie forward with Mig.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Karen. We'd like to prepare a space. It's called the Peace Center. So we're here today to center ourselves and be honored.
You might want just
A little bit louder, got it. So I'd like to invite us to prepare the space today, to gather in this holy, blessed space. We want to pause for silence. So we gather as a sacred act. We gather to witness this sacred act. We gather to make this place whole and holy. We gather to bless all the peacemakers, whether you're here with us for the first time or this is your dozenth time. We gather in times of pandemic, and we gather in times of global compassion. We gather, we show up like we did today. We show up every day for compassion. This day and every day. This day and every day. I'd like to invite Karen to read the land acknowledgement.
Jackie and I will be doing, beginning with acknowledging this sacred land that sustains our life. I will do it first in English, and then Jackie will follow in Spanish. In recognition to the interconnected nature of the universe, we express gratitude to the Payaya people, the indigenous stewards of this area of Turtle Island, now known as San Antonio, Texas. We lament that colonizing powers, malformed by the belief in manifest destiny, institutionalized systems of genocide and slavery on this land. May we, in this moment, breathe in to the multicultural, multi-ethnic aliveness of this sacred land. And on our out-breath, may we breathe and release our addictions to control, our thirst for material accumulation, and our thirst for certitude. With humility, we surrender our embodiment to the service of the divine energy that at its essence is love, peace, and a deep communion with all of life.
Since I'm not a natural Spanish speaker, I know that everybody in this audience is compassionate and will be tolerant of my Spanish. En reconocimiento de la naturaleza interconectada del universo, expresamos nuestra gratitud al pueblo Payaya, los encargados indígenas de esta área, Turtle Island, que ahora llamamos San Antonio, Texas. Lamentamos que los poderes colonizadores deformados por la creencia en el destino manifiesto crearon sistemas de genocidio y esclavitud en esta tierra. Aprovechemos este momento para respirar en la vivacidad multiétnica y multicultural de esta tierra sagrada. Al exhalar, liberemos nuestra sed de control por la acumulación de lo material. Con humildad, entregamos nuestra encarnación al servicio de la energía divina del universo, que es en esencia amor, paz y profunda comunión con toda la vida. Gracias.
Thank you for that honor, Karen and Jackie. I'd now like to invite Jan for our first award recipient.
My name is Jan Olson, and I'm part of the core team of the Peace Center. Can everybody hear me? Okay. I am so happy and so honored to introduce the recipient of our Golden Rule Healer Award, someone I've known and admired for many years, and who has been a beacon for our community during the pandemic. Dr. Junda Wu, the medical director of the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District. What do we hunger for? During the pandemic, we have hungered for healing, for hope, for guidance, and for reassurance. In times of crisis, we look to community leaders like Dr. Wu. Dr. Wu has been with us every day of this pandemic, and she has provided that guidance and reassurance in her calm, clear, and compassionate way. Dr. Wu's story is one with a common thread of compassion. Her first chapter was that of a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. After getting her degree in journalism from the University of Texas at Austin, she covered legal affairs. And I said, why the Wall Street Journal? And she said, because she wanted to be a voice for truth in journalism. And then in the 1990s, her volunteer work during the AIDS pandemic motivated her to pursue a career in medicine. So she completed her medical degree at the State University of New York, and then a residency in obstetrics and gynecology at the Baylor College of Medicine. And then we were very fortunate, Dr. Wu returned to San Antonio, and she spent the next several years in service to marginalized and underserved communities here in San Antonio, both as an obstetrician gynecologist for Central Med and as the medical director of Planned Parenthood of South Texas. And then in 2015, she was appointed the medical director of Metro Health. And very fortunate for us, she was in that position when the pandemic hit. Now, in the beginning of the pandemic, Dr. Wu's focus was on protecting the most vulnerable and marginalized among us. The nursing homes, the shelters, the schools, all the congregate settings, and making sure that they had all that they needed to remain safe. In her words, their safety would make us all safer. And then when the vaccines became available, she made sure that there was an equitable distribution of vaccines, especially among the vulnerable communities. I mean, just consider what vaccine distribution has looked like in this community under her leadership. The Alamo Dome, the mobile COVID homebound program, the COVID pop-up clinics, and all the multiple community partnerships that make vaccines available to every single corner of this community. So I want to share a quote from Dr. Barbara Taylor. She's the chair of the COVID-19 health transition team appointed by the mayor. Dr. Wu is a tireless advocate for marginalized communities, and she brought her knowledge and commitment to successful community engagement to the COVID-19 health transition team. So what do we hunger for? We hunger for healing. Healing of our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And Dr. Wu's leadership in this pandemic has fed that hunger. She is an expression of community compassion and our common humanity. She exemplifies the golden rule: to heal others and community as we all hunger to be healed, as both a person and people together.
Thanks, Jen, for that extravagant introduction. And of course, I would be remiss to not point out that 500 to 800 other people at Metro Health actually helped make all of that happen. So thank you all. Anne actually gave me 3 questions to answer while up here. One is connect to the underlying theme of the award, the Golden Rule. And about 2 months ago, December the 1st was World AIDS Day, reminding me of all the people who already knew what it was like to lose their friends and then their replacement friends, right? For some people, it's not their first pandemic. By the way, in the US, more people have now died of COVID than have died during the entire HIV/AIDS pandemic since 1981. And that is in part because HIV, which is not the same as AIDS, is now a benign chronic condition when treated. Anyway, I've been troubled all pandemic long by shaming and blaming language that we sometimes hear applied to people who take risks and then acquire COVID. And that night, sitting at the AIDS Memorial Service at the Living Church at Woodlawn Point, something clicked for me because I saw a connection between a parallel between some of the attitudes that we see today and the attitudes that were once expressed toward people living with HIV. Because somebody who doesn't get vaccinated and then acquires COVID is in some ways not that different from somebody who engages in condomless sex, for example, and then acquires HIV. In each case, people have really complex, deep, culturally specific reasons for doing what they do, for taking risks, for misjudging risks, right? And especially when we're younger, we're hardwired to take risks too. So here's one thing that we can all do. The next time we hear negative talk about people who are taking risks with COVID, we can interrupt and inject some compassion, and that would be a great expression of the golden rule. Anne's second question was, share how and what these last 2 years have taught you at your core. Well, remember how in 2020 people said certain things would change and never be the same again, and then very quickly things kind of sprang back like a rubber band as much as people could make it, right? People want to go back to that time that I call BC, before COVID. These 2 years have reminded me how easily, how quickly we forget. And yeah, there is a sly joke in there. Human resilience is in some ways built on forgetting, but we cannot forget, we cannot let the world forget that everybody deserves a safe environment in which to work. Occupational health is part of public health. That paid sick leave prevents people from bringing their infections to work. Paid sick leave is part of public health. That businesses and our economy can't function if employees don't have access to high-quality childcare. High-quality childcare is a public good, just like utilities, just like libraries, newspapers, places of worship. And if people can't get welcoming health care, sometimes they will delay until it's too late. So let's not allow each other to forget. Let's remember, too, that being able to trust the science is a privilege accorded to those of us who have never been, not been wronged by science and by experts in the past. History lives on. Glossing over it doesn't solve anything. Structural racism is real. Medical racism is real. We don't all start at the same place when we try to take care of our health, when we try to obtain health care, or sometimes, unfortunately, when we access health care. So let's continue to advocate together for a fair and just society that honors our teachers, our caretakers. By caretakers, I mean healthcare workers, child care workers, elder care workers. By the way, did anybody notice that despite our enormously arcane healthcare system during the pandemic, people were able to get testing and vaccines regardless of income, regardless of immigration status? So, can we use this experience as leverage to incentivize the private sector to do something like this in the future, right? If you have health insurance, then your tests, your vaccines, your insurer will be billed for those on the back end. If you don't, there's a government pool, so it's kind of complicated to get reimbursement, but you can get reimbursed from the federal government. So it's not the single payer healthcare of my dreams, but it exists, and it's, if we created a similar permanent pool and funded it, then think of what we could do. It's just a thought. The third thing that Anne wanted to answer is, what do I hunger for? This is the overarching theme of the entire blessing. And I wrote chocolate on here, but that was a joke. I think we all hunger for less pandemic, right? Look, variants can only occur when the virus is free to spread and mutate. And having almost everyone vaccinated, both here and overseas, is our best defense against new variants. But of course, there are obstacles. There's lack of infrastructure, lack of trust in government, misinformation, and there's a little selfishness in there. I mean, it's not comfortable to talk about, it's complicated to talk about, but when you think about the fact that we have given more boosters in the United States than Nigeria has given out first doses, that is, that's uncomfortable. In Afghanistan, 10% of the population is fully vaccinated. In Syria, 5.5%. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, 0.2%. Obviously, all those countries have other things going on. When you have a war, other things take priority. But wealthy countries could be sharing more. Also, Moderna's vaccine was co-developed by the NIH, although that is in dispute right now. Moderna is disputing that the NIH has any rights to the main patent, but that is partly owned by the US taxpayers. Regardless, so I've given you, I have a couple of beefs, but I like to leave people with tangible things they can do. So I've already given you one thing you can do, which is to interrupt shaming and blaming language. A second thing that many of us can do is to donate to Gavi, that's G-A-V-I. It is a public-private partnership that includes the World Health Organization and UNICEF, and it has so far delivered more than 1 billion doses of vaccine around the world. And last but not least, well, if you're not vaccinated, if your child's not vaccinated, in San Antonio, only 16% of 5 to 11-year-olds are vaccinated. When there's a new vaccine, it is, of course, normal to have questions. At this point, 24 million children in the US alone have gotten the vaccine safely. So if you haven't gotten the vaccine, can we talk? Can we talk to your, or, please talk to your pediatrician. No one is safe until everyone is safe. And we all have a role to play. I know you all recognize that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're not done yet. Right. So we give out really flashy awards, but the award is really the recognition and gratitude for everything that you've done for all of us. That's the award. But for measuring your leadership based on your compassion, we thank you.
Thank you. So, I love this. This is, much more useful than a piece of glass.
Thank you. Andy?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Hill. I teach philosophy and ethics at St. Philip's College, which is why it's my honor today, given that I teach students about the good life and about ethics, to introduce somebody who really embodies that. I'm here to introduce the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Kemp, and there's a lot behind those two short abbreviations, Reverend and Doctor. Not least of which is a lot of work. I was joking with him about that before we started. I said, good grief, I don't think you've slept in past 5 a.m. since the 80s. And that's probably true, because it turns out he is a native of Tucker, Arkansas. He is a graduate of the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And then on an ROTC scholarship, went on to medical school, the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences. And graduated as a physician and then as an officer, became a captain. And it's to San Antonio's great benefit that he came here to do his residency at Brooke Army at BAMC. And we were able to get our hooks into him then. That's good for us, because he was able to become the chief of residence, which I like that story. But then also throughout his career, he bounced away, but then back to us, where he joined the faculty there, was an instructor, a teacher, and was doing this all until you'd mentioned 2009 as the Compassion Charter and that key year with that TED Talk and that moment for us. 2009 was a big year for the Reverend Doctor as well, because he is ultimately, as part of his military career, promoted to colonel, but at the same time, he's also pursuing his ministry and his studies, and he becomes ordained, and then is able to become both first an assistant pastor and then a co-pastor and then ultimately the senior pastor at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, which is our neighbor on the east side at St. Philip's. It turns out that I commute past the church every day. And I can tell you that I see weekly the church's actions in the community. Because as I drive by, I see across the street them setting up food and clothing and aid for the citizens of San Antonio who line up because they know to go there for help. They know that that is a place of compassion and of civic outreach. And now it's a combination of both that lifelong direct service to the needs of first patients and churchgoers and just citizens of any human being who walks up to the door. And I want to refer you to the website at the church for a longer biography of our honoree today, but also to get a sense of the church and their mission and their outreach. Because there is a line that I want to quote from the website as I pull you up and introduce you here. But I think this sums up a lot about the man as well as the mission of the church. It says, he has preached the word of God with power and passion and has sacrificially served the people of Antioch and the citizens of San Antonio. And as a result, souls have been saved, saints have been encouraged, and citizens have been empowered. Thank you for doing that, and welcome. Please join us. My pleasure.
I want to thank the professor for such a wonderful introduction. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I certainly want to thank Reverend Helmke for, I presume, recommending me, and for the Peace Center for this wonderful award. I also want to thank Dr. Wu. Dr. Wu and I have kind of crossed paths in the last couple years quite often because of the pandemic. I think the first time we probably crossed paths was on a Zoom meeting, a community Zoom meeting, and she ended up having to stand in for somebody else, and then I ended up trying to stand in with her. So over the last couple of years, we've crossed paths quite often. So congratulations to you. I certainly want to thank each of you. I certainly thank the Peace Center for giving me this wonderful, wonderful award. When I think of the tremendous people who have received the award in the past, I'm just wonderfully honored to have been included in that distinguished group. Thank you for reading that information about our church. Really, I'm here because of the Antioch Church, and I thank God for them on a regular basis. My wife is here, and we have two of the ministers from our church, the Reverends Willie and Mignon Span, and we appreciate them. Velma is my wife. I should mention her name, too. So thank you for all that you do. I'm going to address those questions that Dr. Wu talked about, that Reverend Helmke gave us, so we're going to be obedient and do what we're told to do. Let me say, first of all, when we talk about the golden rule, that actually was given to us by Jesus Christ in Luke, the 6th chapter, 31st verse, when Jesus said that we should do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And that's a timeless principle. I think that the world would be better if the entire world adhered to it. Sadly, many of us in the world have said, do unto others before they do unto you. And because of that, we've had many divisions in our country, many divisions in our world. But since a boy, I was taught that the golden rule applies to me. And my whole focus has been on trying my best to love and respect others, to help others, so that we might all rise together. That's what I've been trying to do as a physician, and that's what I've been trying to do as a pastor. In the process, I've not always been successful, but I thank God that He's allowed me to be faithful, and He's patient with me as we continue to try to do those things that have been laid upon our hearts and upon our hands. Well, with that in mind, what has transpired over these last 2 years that have been challenges? I could go on and on and on, but let me just say, in terms of medicine, the greatest challenge for us, and I believe Dr. Wu would agree with this, has been facing a virus with which we have not been greatly familiar. A virus that has caused the lives of over 879, probably around 880,000 citizens in the United States alone. It's been a tremendous challenge for us because we like to know how to make a diagnosis and then how to establish treatment and give a reasonable prognosis. But with this virus, we really didn't know. My textbooks didn't tell me. Even when I went online, Mayor, I couldn't find the right thing to do. So I just had to try to work my way through it. It's been a challenge for us. But I think one of the most daunting challenges for us in healthcare has been the prospect of becoming ill ourselves. And then taking that illness, which we acquired by trying to help somebody else, and then carry it home to your wife, your husband, your children, your friends and colleagues. Because every day we went into the hospital to deal with this unknown illness, and we donned all of that protective equipment. We never knew if we were going to be the next one, occupying that hospital bed or on that ventilator in the ICU. That's been a challenge. In ministry, over the last 2 years, one of the greatest challenges has been trying in some way to assure the people of God that in this uncertain storm, there's still hope. Somehow or another, we had to assure the people that God is still in control, that He's still sovereign, and that somehow or another, we were going to ultimately come out as victors. Because in the midst of the storm, we still believed in the God who said to the winds and the waves, "Peace, be still." That's been the challenge. And it's an ongoing challenge. You see, we're facing a virus that's a chameleon of a virus. It keeps changing itself. And we think we got it one day, and the next day, it presents itself in another way. So it's a continuing challenge, and we're doing our best to address that challenge. Well, with all of that in mind, lest I keep you too long, what are the things that I hunger for? Since the challenge is ongoing, what is it that I would like to see, that I believe our people would like to see? Well, those of you who've heard me preach, and I'm not preaching, but I'm getting close. Those of you who heard me preach know that I don't hold back. I just tell it like it is. Sometimes that may make people a little upset, a little uncomfortable. But I believe it's important to be honest. And I just believe, of course, I hunger for healing. Hunger for healing and for peace. I hunger for the recognition that every citizen in the United States of America ought to be able to vote. and to vote without hindrance. I hunger for love. And somehow or another, I believe that despite all that we've gone through and that we're going through in this country, in this state, in this city, that God is still a prayer hearing and prayer answering God. I still believe that He can help us reach those lofty goals. We are not there. We are absolutely not there. But we keep trying. So, let me close by simply saying this. I want to ask that you pray for my colleagues in medicine. Pray for Dr. Wu and people like her who are going in every day to take care of those people that the mayor talks about on the television, about the numbers of people. Those people who occupy hospital beds are not just numbers, they're human beings. And there are human beings who are called upon to care for them day by day. So pray for those colleagues in medicine. I ask that you pray for our church, because you're right, Professor, those people come by our church on a weekly basis, and folks like these people who are sitting over here will go out and they will try their very best to attend to those needs, but we don't have enough to take care of every need. I wish we had. So we got to keep praying for those colleagues in ministry that go out every day to do their very best to help lift others. I want to ask you to pray for my family. Pray for my daughters. I have 2 grandchildren coming. 2 from one woman. My little daughter's having grandchildren on Tuesday. And it's already programmed, Dr. Wu, because they're going to do a C-section. So y'all pray for my family. And then finally, I ask that you pray for me. May God bless you. May God keep you, is my constant prayer for you. Bless you.
I firmly believe that both of these people were born for this moment. Absolutely. The leadership that you have given our faith leaders who didn't have words during these 2 years and probably lots of time did not have the courage that they were called to. But you held us there. And in my role with the city, I knew who to call. When it came to the health, I contacted Jinda. And when it came to moving the faith leaders forward, it was you. So thank you for equally measuring your leadership based on that golden rule, which is at the bottom of all world religions.
Yes, yes.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan from the Peace Center, and it is my honor and privilege to announce that the 2022 San Antonio Peace Laureate is the San Antonio Food Bank. I'm leaving my mask on for a minute so that you can see that it has radishes on it. I dug through my mask collection and found one with food on it. And radishes have a special symbolism for the Peace Center. The word radish and radical come from the same word, which means root. So when we talk about radishes, when we talk about radicals, we're talking about going to the root of the matter. And we'll see what that means in terms of the food bank. I'm going to take my mask off for now so that you can hear me. And I'm going to start off with a quote from Gandhi because, as Anne pointed out at the beginning of this ceremony, this is the season for nonviolence that starts today on the anniversary of the assassination of Mohandas Gandhi, and it ends on April 4th on the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. And during those 64 days, we try our best to live a life of nonviolence, a life of peace, a life of compassion. But this is what Gandhi had to say. There are people in the world so hungry that God cannot appear to them except in the form of bread. So when we ask what we hunger for, there are people in San Antonio that hunger for bread, that hunger for food. It's as simple as that. It's not a metaphor of what we hunger for, we hunger for truth and righteousness. We hunger for bread. And the food bank has been there since 1980, answering that call for bread and being the face of God, being the face of the divine in San Antonio that can be seen by the people who hunger for something as simple as bread. But it's not as easy as giving people a bag with some macaroni and cheese and peanut butter and jelly and saltines in it, because the food bank has been recognized nationally, internationally, for its holistic approach to dealing with hunger. That hunger is real and must be dealt with bread, but hunger is also a symptom of something else. It's a symptom of injustice. It's a symptom of poverty. It's a symptom of a need for skills and love and attention. And the food bank, believe it or not, gives all of that to the people of San Antonio. I didn't do that, Anne. Yeah, I'm fine. Good grief. Maybe I need to be a little bit more laid back in the way I talk about the food bank, but it's hard. Andy had recommended that you go to the Antioch Missionary Baptist Church and read a list of what they do on their website, and I recommend you do the same thing at the food bank, because a list of their programs is incredible. One of the things that really impresses me is that they have a 20-year contract with the National Park Service to rent farmland where they have a farm. They get it for $1 a year, and they're teaching how to farm. They teach warehouse workers how to be warehouse workers. They have a culinary school to teach people how to cook. So they're just not handing out peanut butter to hungry people. They are taking care of the whole person and their whole needs. When I was speaking to Lauren earlier in the week about what the food bank does, I mentioned our new relationship with Alamo Colleges. And she says, you know what? Maybe it was Mario I was talking to. We have a relationship with Alamo Colleges now with the food bank since COVID. We have offices at all 5 campuses of the college. And not only are we giving out food, we're helping students who are in dire need of food help sign up for things like SNAP. You probably know all about that, Meg, in your work at Northwest Vista. We have 2 guys here today who can tell you about the food bank a whole lot better than I can. One of them is Eric Cooper, who you probably know as the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the food bank. He's been here since 2001. He was brought in from Dallas, and before that, Salt Lake City. At a time when the food bank was really struggling. It was small, and it had been through 4 directors in just about as many years. And he's been here since, and the food bank since then has become a national model for what not only a food bank should be, but it consistently ranks in the top 2% of Charity Navigator of what a charity should operate as. It's exemplary. And Eric is everywhere. I think everybody has probably met him. You might not have met the board member he brought with him, Seymour Battle. Seymour is a senior vice president for communications and engagement at Valero. And for about the past 2 years, he's been on the board of the food bank. So I'm going to bring these guys up here, and they're going to tell you what they do. But I want to encourage you to go to their website, just not to learn more about them, but I bet you guys have a donate button on there, don't you? And I bet you have a way that you can sign up to volunteer. And I bet you have a way that you can share your Facebook postings and let the whole world know what the food bank is doing and what the food bank needs. Because that's what's really needed. They need your time, they need your treasure, they need your voice, they need your talents, and they need us to go out into the community. Now is a time of great need, but it's also the time after Christmas, when everything kind of slumps, people are sort of giving out. So go to that food bank page, safoodbank.org, and give them what you got. But for now, Eric Seymour, you come up here and tell everybody about what you do.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. We should take her on the show, on the road with her. She's great. So, my name is Seymour Bell, and on behalf of the San Antonio Food Bank Board of Directors, I want to say thank you for being here today and also for the recognition and the award. Just speaking to kind of the questions that were presented to us, I just want to kind of, in a narrative form, just speak to what we hunger for at the food bank and speak to that as the theme today and just speak as a community. So, at the food bank, we seek to be a place of healing for those that are in need. And not only in the way of food and nourishment, but feeding and nourishing and being a place of healing for people, for hope and in the soul. We try to meet people where they are, to remove those natural barriers that prevent people from coming forward for services that are so much in need in our community. We also believe that we want to hunger for. We also hunger for an army, an endless army of hunger fighters that make the longevity and the success that we've achieved at the food bank possible. Without volunteers in the community and throughout, not just the crisis, but all the time, working within our communities, their individual communities, and throughout San Antonio, making this possible. So we hunger for those volunteers to come forward and give their unique talents in whatever way they choose to help us achieve the mission of providing nourishment to those in need. We also, we talk about, what do you hunger for? What have you learned over the last couple of years? And I would say what I've learned most is how resilient this community is. I've learned how great the need is, because a lot of people figured out that or became aware that the need was because of COVID. Well, the need has always been there. COVID amplified the need within our community, and it enabled people to see and have a focus on it because you couldn't go anywhere else, right? But the need has always been there. So I hunger for awareness. For people, we hunger for awareness at the food bank to know that need continues beyond COVID. It's a day-to-day need, so we hunger for awareness and within the need within our community. And also, just personally, just learning, it is, as you watch people, and the Reverend Doctor spoke about it from a medical perspective, is, coming to work, helping those in need with the risk of taking something back home. But I saw volunteers come out en masse at these mega distributions. Same concerns, but they knew the need was there. And so to come out and help the community, be a part of the solution with risks is just a huge. And so we hunger for that type of dedication from our volunteers and from the staff and from Eric and the leadership team to continue as we go forward. So I will leave you with that because Eric is the man of our. I want to leave him as much time as possible, but I do want to leave you with saying that, and you kind of spoke to it in your introduction. The success, the longevity that we achieved at the food bank could not be possible without the leadership of Eric Cooper. He has been a solid leader. He's been a great leader for us. He's been a part of this community. It's not just serving the community, it's being a part of the community, and he embodies that. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Eric Cooper. Let him take it.
So I hate that, right? For someone that represents an organization that couldn't do what it does without so many, I recognize that, and I've been blessed with an incredible board, and you can see their passion and their talent and their handsomeness in Seymour. But our incredible staff, and joining me today is Lauren Deal, who has dedicated her life to helping people live in their finest hour, and that's when they engage. And if you haven't met Lauren, as she works in the faith community to fully help us all exercise our faith and be the person we know we can be, and our army of volunteers. I mean, it is incredible to see people selflessly serving, putting themselves at risk for the benefit of a stranger. And Dr. Wu, thank you, boy, for your friendship but always speaking peace and being direct. Reverend Kemp, thank you for our partnership on the East Side. You set a model for how churches should serve, and thank you. You know, I always think it's the sweetest, most treasured thing to be honored by those you love, and the belief that when those you love are proud of you, that is the greatest reward. And so we serve not for recognition, but just to be useful. And if those that are finding use are proud of you, then that's where you want to be. I too am on the three questions. Timur was going to take a couple. I was going to take a couple. So real quick, the last 2 years have been interesting, right? I mean, hunger is a symptom of poverty. The need is great. We fed about 60,000 people a week pre-pandemic, BC. And then that number quickly, as things unraveled, went to 120,000 people each week. In a food supply environment where all the places we would get food, if you think restaurants, hotels, caterers, they were closing, and so there wasn't an opportunity for us to pick up. That shift from consumption at a restaurant to a grocery store caused that our great partners at HEB were selling out. They were more efficient, which meant our trucks were coming back with less. And so our supply shrinking, our demand rising, it became a very desperate place. But in the midst of that, we saw the unprecedented demand be met with an unprecedented response. And our community stepped up and continued to step up as now the line is shrinking to 90,000 people each week. I'll quote the mayor, he said, Eric, right, I mean, when he'd talk about the food bank, he'd say, the food bank fed 60,000 people a week before the pandemic, right? So wake up to that reality, right? And is that the destination we want to go back to? And that just seems like the wrong place. Our client at the food bank historically is a female, a minority, a parent, and she's working. She's always gone to work sick because she had to. If she didn't go to work, she didn't get paid. If she didn't get paid, she couldn't make her rent, and then she became homeless. The pandemic, the last 2 years, taught us that if we're sick, right, we should stay home. We don't want to get our coworkers sick. We don't want to get customers sick. But yet, as Dr. Wu said, we've pivoted now to back to normal. In an environment that I'd say is a little bit of don't ask, don't tell, because she's going back to work sick today. She has to. Until we think strategically on policy that can protect her income, while she is being responsible for society, will have a gap. So there's lots of things you could do in kind of wrapping up. I think it's to serve with compassion. It's so funny just hearing the origin of the Peace Center, and we have this incredible opportunity to mentor a lot of students and volunteers that come in, and lots of folks seeking different degrees and wanting to get into nonprofit work. And if I'm successful, I'm convincing them to not get into nonprofit work. I'm like, let me be the example. I mean, it's kind of like a preacher's kid. Like, what did you see in my life that looked desirable? Was it the absenteeism or what? You know, like, I mean, so, but in all truth, the point that I try to make is get an MBA. Because what I need to shorten my line is a CEO of conscience. And if there's more CEOs of conscience looking after their people, that will end hunger. That will end poverty. That will end racism. That will end the hardships that we've seen front and center the last 2 years. And we've seen for a lot longer than that. If we choose to make a better destination in our future, we can end it all. Please, fill the measure of your creation. Step up to those opportunities to change our destiny so that there's no hunger and there's no hardship. That is what I hunger for. I hunger for compassion. I hunger for a secure San Antonio, to be free of anxiety and fear, to be secure in food, to be secure in housing, to be secure in education, and to be secure in employment. I'm mindful in the space of physicians, it's easier to save a life than it is a livelihood. It's a lifetime work, but if we lean in on it together, we can get there sooner. Thank you for this privilege. God bless.
So we try to be practical. And so your real award is not this. The real award, again, is gratitude and recognition for the crystal clear leadership that you gave all of us. You know, hands down, the image, the work, the clarity of leadership, the compassion that was all evident. We'd like to plant a tree. So we plan to, with the Compassion Tree Project of the city, we'd like to plant an apple tree at your site, and we will figure that out. But between now and then, we're giving you a crystal apple for your crystal clear leadership.
Thank you.
And gratitude from all of us. And I do have a quote from a friend of yours that I want to add. Because in a moment, as a part of our blessing ritual, which is why we've all come, we're going to be seeing some photographs by one of our photographers, our artist, Michael Nye. And so he sent these words. Stories are the threads that bind us together. Every family has its own story and deserves respect. Because Eric and the food bank believe this, they encouraged my documentary project about hunger and resilience that now has traveled to 55 cities around our country, sharing our stories that bind us together. So thank you for your service. I'm so excited that we learned that there is this partnership between Alamo colleges and the food bank. You know, like the sky's the limit, right? Synergy. So thank you.
At this time, we'd like to invite Rosalind up to guide us through our ritual.
Brian, are you ready?
Good afternoon. My name is Rosalind Falcon Collier, and I'm a core team member with the San Antonio Peace Center, and I teach in continuing ed here at Oblate School of Theology. Anne is passing out napkins and apples. We're going to do a ritual. The purpose of the blessing of the Peacemakers is to honor the laureates and to honor the Golden Rule people. But the real purpose is to bless all the peacemakers who show up, the people who sometimes don't think of themselves as peacemakers in the world. And this time that we take to stop and reflect on that will be the next 5 or 8 minutes to realize that we have the potential to be a peacemaker in our families, in our city, in our communities, and ultimately in our world. So one of the great questions that we have always used at the Peace Center is this one. I want you to think for a second. What is the greatest nation on earth? Ooh, 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 ooh. No, it's a trick question, don't worry. The greatest nation on earth is the imagination. So if we use our imagination this afternoon, as you have heard different people standing up here saying they imagined a city that could be free from hunger. The greatest nation on earth is our own imagination and bringing that to fruition in our lives and in our country. So don't gobble the apple down. I did this ritual one time before. It's a Thich Nhat Hanh ritual. And before I started, 2 people had already eaten. Hold it, hold it. Dinner will be coming after this. So if you brought an apple today, for those of you who are in your homes, hold it in your hands. If you have one nearby, just go pick it up. And if you don't have one, let's use our imagination during this ritual of being blessed as people who worked for and honor peace in our city and in our world. This day is our annual blessing of the Peacemakers for what we have done and for what we will do individually and together during this coming year. Sometimes we need to stop, take a breath, to reflect on our peacemaking, to experience the presence of joy in the co-creation of peace among us. Today is the day. and this is the moment. Inhale and ask for myself, what do I really hunger for in my life? Exhale to make a space inside for my response. Hold it close. Let it enter and rest in my heart. As we breathe in, look at the apple in our hands. As we breathe out, let go of any distractions that keep me from being fully present and getting traction with this present moment. Be still and know that we are a blessing, just as this apple is a blessing. Imagine this apple coming from a seed planted in the ground, nurtured, fertilized by sunshine and shower, growing in an orchard surrounded by a family of apple trees, harvested by migrants who work hard for very little money, transported to wholesalers and distributed to our local supermarkets, where the greengrocer displays the apples for our purchase. Cashiers place them in a bag and we bring them into our homes. Now pick up the apple and take a moment to appreciate where it came from and how many hands have been involved in bringing it to us for this ritual. Apples come in many varieties, just like we do. What kind of apple is mine? What color is it? How does it feel? Is it cold? Smooth? Warm? Does it have bumps? Turn it and look at it from different sides. Top side, bottom side. What does it smell like? Bring it to rest again in our palm. After breathing in and out, let's give our apple a smile and slowly take a bite. Mindfully chew it. Allow its juice and flavor to fill my mouth. Savor the apple taste. Become fully aware of this moment. Live into this experience. The simple daily act of eating an apple. Live into the awareness of the simple daily act of making peace in ourselves, in our families, in our city, and in our world. May we be blessed and nourished with the taste of compassion on our journey toward peace. May we be a blessing to our community. May we know that peace and compassion, like this apple, are in our hands every moment of every day. And I invite us, as we continue eating our apple, all to listen to a song called Imagine as we continue to enjoy our sacred fruit. Thank you for being blessed as a peacemaker in our community. And thank you to John Lennon and Yo-Yo Ma and the pianist for gracing us with that music.
It's our prayer and hope that that this ritual, so whenever you eat another apple, you will remember this moment. Peace Center is actually a verb, and we used to be very emphatic about it. In fact, we're very emphatic about how it's written, that the center part leans forward and into the world. It's not a place, it's a people and what we do together, that we center our lives there. We recognize too, with the last 2 years, because we haven't been able to gather that ritual is incredibly important to people, that our gathering together is a part of that. And so, in memory and gratitude to Thich Nhat Hanh, this seemed like a good ritual that we could carry with us and that we can share with others whenever we pass apples or share an apple. By the way, they were super washed before. We should have mentioned that. So every year, this is what we do. I don't know what it's going to look like next year. And I think, Brian, now would be a good time, speaking of next year. It's always the last Sunday of January because it's always the beginning of the season for nonviolence. So to keep in mind these 64 days and the other 301 that goes with us in our hand, just like an apple. He's looking for it. It's on the Michael Nye slides. There you go. So it's our hope and prayer that you carry this ritual. But as I said, we don't know what it's going to look like next year because, drum roll please, everybody. I want to invite the mayor forward, and Mike Flores was not able to be with us, but Mig and Neil, who are carrying the banner of the Peace Center forward, are going to
Well, if I can take a bit of liberty with some time, how wonderful it is to see all of you today. And I'm a believer, I'm sure all of you are, that in certain moments where we need them most, people seem to rise and become leaders. And after the 2 years that I've been through, that we've all been through, I can't think of 3 more appropriate people and organizations to honor in San Antonio. So congratulations to our laureates. Really incredible. And if I might go out on a limb, because it's my honor to... Oh yeah. Because it's my honor to be part of this. It seems like every year. Thank you very much, Ann. I think that one of the fundamental urges that human beings have is to form government. And because they expect standards and a set of expectations of how we should treat each other. I also happen to think that people form democratic governments because there is a fundamental understanding that people should be treated with justice and dignity and equity. So as it relates to this Charter for Compassion, it's often been said since we signed it in 2017, and mind you, I wanted it to be the first document I signed as mayor, which it was, thankfully. But it's been brought up before that all of a sudden compassion started in San Antonio when we committed ourselves to this charter. That's not true. It's definitely not true. San Antonio is a compassionate city because of the people who have inhabited this city for hundreds, if not thousands of years. The signing of the Charter for Compassion was a reminder, especially in the darker periods of our lives, that we need to be committed to acts of compassion, that compassion is who we are and it's who we need to continue being. It was a commitment that the government placed on itself to make sure that we're leading and allocating and representing in that same manner, compassionately. So I want to thank you all for, again, recognizing all the work that's gone into Compassionate SA, and the fact that, you know, this is decades in the making, the Peace Center. But I also urge you to think about this city and Compassionate SA as something that didn't begin in 2017 and doesn't have a term. It certainly isn't associated with any elected office term. But it's something that is eternal for San Antonio and something that needs to continue. Needs to continue from one election to the next. We need to expect every mayor to sign a Charter for Compassion. It should be prerequisite for putting their name on the ballot. But it's a commitment that we all make to each other to continue to treat each other with dignity, with fairness, with equity, with justice. And so I'm honored to be up here with, I think, people who think the same way. I'm certain all of you do. But it's great to share the stage with an organization that I admire because they are committed to that in their own profession, which is to ensure that every child born in San Antonio, regardless of their circumstances, has the opportunity to get a secondary, post-secondary education, which is required to get a job now that pays a living wage. So it's my honor to share the stage with them briefly so they can tell us what the future of Compassionate SA looks like.
Thank you so much. My name is Neil Lewis. I teach humanities, and I'm a co-coordinator of the Peace and Conflict Studies program at Northwest Vista College. More than 15 years ago, Northwest Vista College embarked on a journey to find innovative ways to embody the mission of a community college. Our creative act was to birth the Peace and Conflict Studies program with the goals to challenge us and to democratize education. The three founders from the San Antonio Peace Center were there when it all began to nurture and help shape this new venture. Rosalind Falcon Collier and Helmke and Susan Ives are brilliant peacemakers who have nurtured peace and compassion in the community for over 25 years. As we've seen today, through their leadership, efforts, and evolution, they've been catalysts in making San Antonio a better place to be, a more compassionate place to be. And for Migdalia and I, and for all the faculty and staff at Northwest Vista, the administration of Alamo Colleges, it's an impressive body of work, it's humbling, and we feel honored to follow your footsteps. We're at a liminal moment today. As the mayor mentioned, as Ann mentioned, the Peace Center is transforming and transitioning to Northwest Vista College. The move is historic, and nationally, it's a unique model. It's going to be blending the work of equity, justice, and scholarship, all in the context of a community college. So I'm going to introduce who will become the director of the Peace Center at Northwest Vista College. This is Migdalia Garcia.
It is so wonderful, like I said, in our centering to gather, as we haven't done that in a long time. And this transition is about gathering. It was about gathering ideas. It was about gathering passion, envisioning together that imagination. Where could we go? Where could we be? It was in response to calls like the mayor's put out. How do we focus on community wellness? How do we focus on our collective well-being? Our mayor said that several times. Our chancellor, Mike Flores, his goal is to end poverty through education. Talk about a CEO with conscience. Our president, Rick Baser, thank you for trusting us, Dr. Baser. Thank you for listening to us as we listen to the needs of the community. Dr. Jackie Clonch, for being such a pioneer and trailblazer and doing something that we didn't know what it was going to look like when we birthed it. Now it's a mature teenager. And we were looking for more. How could we do more? And the answer, the response, was the San Antonio Peace Center. As we journey on this transition, we've been engaged in deep listening, in deep relationship, in compassionate accountability, and a shared vision. All of this is grounded in courage. And so we know that courage means heart, core. The founders of the San Antonio Peace Center carry a lot of wisdom, as does the core group. And one of the things that they have reminded us is to begin where you want to end. And we did. That's what we're doing. In the center of the community, in the heart of education, in the courageous carriers of the future, our students. May we continue our collective calling of educating, empowering, liberating, listening, advocating, and healing for authenticity, for wholeness, and for community flourishing. May we continue to hunger and be nourished by peace and compassion. Thank you. Mayor.
So, I think a lot of people have the run of show, so I'm supposed to be excited now, which I am. And so, no, thank you very much to Alma College District and my friend, Chancellor Mike Flores, who himself, I believe, leads with compassion. I will say this, I forgot to mention, and something that you preach all the time, which is that compassion is also a verb, not just Peace Center. It's not a noun, it's a verb. We have to practice it every day. And one thing, again, what I want to express to you about the future and how we can hope in this work, I think was said to a point by Eric Cooper. So I think we need to distribute his transcript because he is absolutely right. This is all about making sure that we go back. We don't go back to pre-pandemic when the challenges of equity were hidden and that we didn't think about them, that the 60,000 families a week that were relying on the work of the food bank don't go unnoticed again, and that we work ourselves to a better future. So I'm extremely hopeful and excited about 2022 and beyond, and let's everybody Peace Center.
And this guy, don't leave yet. This guy has come, actually, you've come since before you were elected as mayor. And I remember you said to me, it was right over there about where Meg was standing, and you said, "Who are you people?" That was after that blessing that he and his family came to. Anyway, this poor guy signs this resolution in 2017. He doesn't have a copy. So this is your copy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you.
I'm gonna
Are
put
you
this up
kidding?
tonight.
I know.
Thank you all.
I have one last very important thing. So Scott, if you would please stand up. This is Scott Woodward. Take off your mask so we can see your beautiful image in God. President at Oblate School of Theology. Thank you. He's president of Oblate School of Theology, where we are now, and they have homed the Peace Center for many years now and provided us this beautiful space and much love and much compassion. And so we are grateful to you for believing in us to continue to let us plant in the world. I remember when we said, could we have a little space or whatever? And then the next thing you know, he's talking like offices or whatever, and we're going, we don't need an office. Like we're just a people, and we come together, you go, oh, you're a convening group. And I was like, oh, we're a convening group. I didn't even know what that was, right? But he's been nurturing, Oblate's been nurturing the coming together of the centering of peace to bring us to this point where it's going to, it's like Matrix, if anybody watched Matrix. He puts his knee down and then it does this. That's where we are. So we will see you. Thank you, Scott. Thank everyone at Oblate. We will see you much fuller room in 2023 on January 29th. Thank you for being with us.